This is a talk by Dr. Raj Lal on emergency preparedness and response during disasters in India. Dr. Raj Lal is a cardiovascular thoracic surgeon and physician specialist for Illinois Medical Emergency Response Team, and he is also medical manager of Illinois Urban Research and Rescue Task Force and volunteers for medical mission during disasters in India. He has, being a cardiothoracic surgeon, now after retirement, he is doing as a volunteer for emergency preparedness. He has great commitment to see that emergency preparedness is well established, especially with teams in India. So he is very much working on that. And Raj, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. As you mentioned earlier, about a year ago, Biru and you, encouraged me to start something, and we went through the process. And when last year I was in India, I met Ambassador Powell, and at the same time, the PA of Mr. Nair. I do think our journey, I was thinking about when I retired what to do about, how to go about my life. And it occurred to me that I should be interested in humanitarian mission. My wife Gail has been encouraged me and have been part of this journey since 2001, where we have spent a lot of time in humanitarian mission in that part of the world. So this is a culmination of those experiences and thought how to go about it. We are both trained by the National Disaster Life Support Foundation, which gives the basic disaster life support course and adult disaster life support courses in Georgia. So it's nice to have a small group so we can just talk about it, and you just feel free to stop. Disaster is nothing new. And this latest one in June 2013, I'm sure you have seen these pictures. Uttarakhand is especially close to us heart because 10 years ago, Gail and I went to Badrinath and got married there. So it has a special place in our heart. And the picture on the left is really Rudraprayag, where the two rivers meet. And you can see the force of the water that's tumbling the building. And then on your right is a picture where the road is wiped out and people are stranded. But here is a picture for Delhi airport, and this is in June 17. This is supposed to be the airport where everybody is proud of it, latest international airport, and when you come out and you have to wade through the knee-deep water, you wonder what is going on. And this is no accident, because the basic infrastructure where the water has to be drained is lacking, so that you have all backup of water. So here is the after effect of that Uttarakhand disaster. $1.9 billion economy loss, and what to say about the human life? Defense Minister A.K. Anthony in the Lok Sabha said that 6,000 people have been killed, and majority of them, 5,000 some numbers, are the pilgrims who just perished away. And so this begs the question, because when last year I was there, at that time there were Assam flames, and thousands of villages were wiped out. As a matter of fact, when I was sitting with our Ambassador Powell, she said, there is a flood, and I want to help in your government, but I don't know how to approach them, because it's such a sensitive issue. I don't want to offend them, and if they ask me, we'll provide these services. And then a year before, in Orissa, 2011, same thing happened, and thousands of people were left out. So this begs the question, this is the article of Deccan Chronicle. Monsoon is an every year phenomenon. People they love monsoon because that creates the fertility of the land and the water source. So they also know that it creates floods. So why can't we get ready in time? This begs the question. And in disaster management, one has to look at the risk analysis and then have some strategy that how to go about mitigating. So the objective of talk is, we have to identify the critical gaps in the current situation in India and what the needs are. The second is how existing gaps can be best filled and how U.S. and Indian diaspora can provide support. Because a lot of Americans now are going back and seeking a job in the United States, India, and a lot of Indians who are U.S. citizens are going back and resettling and trying to do that. And it's develop a detailed plan for how the proposed training center can best provide training and leadership in disaster preparedness and response. The National Disaster Life Support Foundation, which I pointed out earlier, is a non-profit organization, and it started even before 9/11. Before 9/11, there is a consortium of 4 universities in the South: Medical College of Georgia, University of Georgia, ATM University, and Southern School of Dallas. They started sort of standardizing the process. Before that, it was very haphazard training. There was no standardization. And since then, they, with the support of the American College of Emergency Physician and AMA, have come up with these courses, which Gail and I have both taken it. And it's based on a train-the-trainer model and trying to build a culture of safety. What is a culture of safety? Well, you do the things repeatedly, so it becomes your second nature. You don't have to think about what you need to do, you just go ahead and do it. And ultimately, the idea of this is to increase the national resilience, because ultimately, it is the people who are affected and how they're going to go back to their lives and carry on their daily. So disasters, whether they are man-made or they're natural, the really operational definition of disaster is where the needs are greater than the resources. You don't have enough resources to fill the needs. And it has unintended consequences. It's unpredictable. Of course, in monsoon we can predict every year. But if you have a terrorism, they're planning, and we have no clue what is going to happen. Any disaster, even if the car accident, the guys who come to help you is the guys who is right there. So they are the first responders. Timing is very critical. And what we have to do, that we have to look at the vulnerabilities and see how we can identify those risks and how we can mitigate them. So here is the India hazard profile, a map of India. And you can see that 60% of land mass is prone to earthquakes. And 40 million hectare-acres of land mass is prone to floods. Happens every year. There is 8,000 kilometers long coastline with 2 cyclones seasons. And every year, 68% of the total area is vulnerable to drought. So you have 2.3 million houses damaged annually. Floods, all that. And as mentioned earlier, the 8,000 kilometer coastline exposed to tropical cyclone, and that takes care of another million of houses. So here you have a picture, hazard profile, and everybody knows this is going to happen, and how you can find things where you can diminish. Disaster is going to occur, no matter what we do. Because disaster is happening, there is a climate change, a lot of deforestation, urban population increasing, people trying to live near the coast, and they are more prone for the floods and you name the tsunami. but it's the matter of looking at the things, how you can prepare yourself, which is within ours. So here's the disaster management in India. There was a special committee which was formed, which really created Management Authority, NDMA, and the State Disaster Management Authority. The chairman of that authority is Prime Minister Singh, and the vice chair is Mr. Reddy. Now, once that authority was set up, there was an act in the Indian government 2005 which created National Disaster Management Institute, and you will see the picture of it. Now, in India, if there is a disaster, they have this National Disaster Response Force, which consists of 8 battalions. You have Army, Air Force, Navy, and everybody else. So they are the ones which really respond. When I was in Delhi last year, there was a 4-year-old fell into borewell. And there was news every day in the radio and television. Ultimately, they have to get the NDRF, and it took them 60 hours to get that girl out. And you can understand what the result of that rescue was. So the purpose of the rescue is trying to give the most to the maximum people and trying to increase the most survivorship. Ministry of Science and Technology, and then Nandan Nalakani, who used to be the chair of Infosystem, have created this Aadhaar, which is a 12-digit individual identification number, which I hope everybody register it. There's 1.2 billion Indian at present, but I hear 400,000 have registered so far. But at least this will give them some handle if there is a disaster that happens. This is the National Disaster Management structure. You can see the governance, and but the purpose of the slide is there are a lot of the departments and everybody in its own silos. Yeah. And this is where the problem is, because everybody is interested in preserving their own funding, and they don't share the information. They don't share the information. That culture of sharing and building a relationship, which is so much important in disaster management, because you got to know the person before, unless you work with them. It's about the buddy system, which you see in the army, anywhere else. It's the same thing. I work with the firefighters, and they know my capacity, and I know their skills. So it works both ways. So can doing good be done better? National Disaster Management Authority, they think they do it very well. They don't need any outside help. But let me give an example, India versus Israel. Both are democratic countries. Both got independence in mid-40s. Both are really on cutting edge of software industry. Israel has the most patent in the Southeast Asia every year. The difference is, and both countries live around hostile environment. You have Pakistan, you have China, and of course Israel doesn't need any mention there, every day. But the difference is, in Israel, every high school boy and a girl has to spend 2 years or 3 years in the army. And that teaches them a lesson about their citizenship, not about how to take care of yourself, how to take care of your friend and your neighbor and loved ones. So they learn it, even from the school, the kids learn how to put on a mask. They have the, safe rooms in every house, in basement. You can't build a house. The codes are such. Every hospital has a basement, and they have an area of shelter. So that is what I mean by developing a culture of safety and security. But
there is a population difference.
Yeah, but so what? You have Israel.
The number of
6 million, 6.5 million. Half and half is Jews, half is Arab. But their If you talk about Israel, it's only 260 miles long and 70 miles wide. And you look about the India size, it's just enormous. So this is not to say that Israelis are doing better. There has to be a will to do it better. And this is what I mean by developing a culture of safety and security. If you have a disaster, 75 to 80% fatalities occur in the first 20 minutes. First hour of the disaster is the golden hour. And it takes really a unity mind and effort. Our President Kalam in the past coined this word unity, mind, and effort, but this is pretty well part of this disaster management, because all the energies are geared towards one goal, how to increase the survivorship. So, principle of emergency management, I think you all know. I'm not going to elaborate. Collaborative, coordinated, flexible. It has to be professional and comprehensive. One has to really plan for all hazard event. It has to be progressive, where you have to think about what future disaster may occur. It has to be risk-driven, as I mentioned earlier, that risk management principles in assigning priorities and resources, because this is where the problem occurs. You have more needs and limited resources. Integrated, of course, you need to everybody coordinated, so that everybody, whether it's in private sector or public sector, they're working for one goal, how to increase the resilience. And the most important thing is you can't do it unless you have an emergency management information system, where you can plug these things in, collect the data, and then go backwards what needs to be done, what lessons we learn from disaster, and how you can make it better and improve on it. So the proposal of training center is that it's based on time-tested courses and the preparedness. It's not about population at large, but it starts with personal preparedness. If you are chronic diabetes or hypertension, you want to make sure you have 72 hours pills. Same thing, something happens, you have food where canned goods and water is available to you. If you go to Costco, they sell little kit.
Survival kit or something.
Survival kit. And it's not very expensive. And the same thing, if you are flying a plane, you look at the exit, how far on the road you are, So it's just paying attention to the small things, because ultimately it is about the changing of behavior and to limit the impact of disaster on people. And it's a continuous cycle. It's preparedness, it's response, and recovery and mitigation. So it doesn't matter whether it's after terrorism or it's natural disaster. It is a continuous cycle of planning, managing, organizing, and monitoring and improving activities to ensure effective coordination, enhancement capabilities. It's about increasing your search capacity. So preparedness, I can tell you my own experience, our own experience in Urban Search and Rescue Task Force. We have managers which are for search, we have for rescue, logistics, communication, and medical, and a few others. So all the ancillary people are there. And if you look at the 9/11, what happened? The radios didn't work.
Yeah.
They couldn't talk to each other.
Fire couldn't talk to...
Yeah, they were a different wavelength.
Wavelengths, yeah.
So, and since then we've been trying to get a uniform radio signals and have the wavelength where you can talk to each other. Maintenance and training of emergency services. We, every month or every other month, go through our cache and look at what we have, what we don't have, which drugs have expired, which needs to be reordered, and stockpiling, inventory. All these things takes time, and we do it every month. Medical unit does their own thing, and others. And the response, when you mobilize everything else and you respond, because first 72 hours are most important. We now going through plan, we will be deployed in January in very cold weather in North Wisconsin, our team, and we got to figure out in those cold temperatures how to sustain ourselves, because our goal is that our member of the team who go there, they come safety. They are safe. Because once that member is hurt, the whole chain just breaks down. The purpose is to, before we help somebody, we want to make sure that every team member is healthy and, is well taken care so they can perform the most effectively.
Well, now, that's something what happened in Arizona when those firefighters died, right?
Well, the firefighters, what happened, there was a long, they just, it's like, again, the thing's overconfidence. Sometimes the bane of the swimmers who are most experienced, they drown because they go beyond their capacity and capability. So it is based on this improvement cycle, which was really brainchild of Edward Deming, who used to be the guru of process management, and in the States he was not recognized. But Toyota hired him, and Toyota, he did this, and this is why that Toyota is, you can see.
Deming is worshipped as God in Japan.
It's a guru.
Deming is,
Yeah, so this is nothing really, it's a plan. You establish your objectives and what the processes need to do. Everybody has a plan, but they don't define the processes. Flying a plane is a process. You have a checklist, you go through it, and you perform it. And then implement the plan, and execute it, collect the data, and look at the end, what the results are, and compare what the expected results are. And the last one is take corrective actions. So between the actual and plan, so you are more successful the next time around. So the training center goal is, in India, it's based on the idea that private-public partnership. So you have private sector, because what happens in disaster? Even if you're working in private sector, you're going to take care of your family first. You're not going to go to the corporate office or whatever businesses. You want to make sure, or if something happens at the work, you're going to leave the work because you want to make sure that your loved ones are taken care. So it has to, and it has a lot of implication on the economic consequences. You saw earlier, $1.9 billion, Uttarakhand. And this happens every year. And they don't want to spend some money, very little money, as Dr. Thomas was pointing out earlier, that Indian government doesn't want to take concrete. They think they have everything. But anyhow, economic consequence of disaster, critical structure, power generator. We had our problem in New York many years back, but we have a blackout. And buildings, and when you look at the Katrina, and even last year, Sandy, the hospitals, power generators are out, and they have to be evacuated. So even in this country, where we have all the resources, we don't meet up all our goals. The all-hazard planning for survival of resilient private sectors in infrastructure is most important. And the other focus is the health sector, on training of the healthcare providers, staff, hospital. It's not only physicians or nurses or respiratory therapists. It is also the people who work, who are cleaning the hospital, who are transporting the patient. Everybody is important. Security. Everybody has to know what they're doing. And of course in India, if you go there, every corner there's a doc in the box, excuse my expression, and they're running the nursing home. So if you're planning to do that, you have to look how you can involve those clinics which support the healthcare people goals during exercise and get better at disaster response for the employers. And this is the earlier thing I mentioned, that National Disaster Life Support Foundation, which is disaster response and economic development, is public-private collaboration. The training center provides the framework for this collaboration, and this is based in Georgia, city of Georgia and the state of Georgia. And this is, there are 3 courses. One is which is the slide is not projecting, is Core Disaster Life Support Foundation. It is the basic course, awareness course, which is not only for physicians but also for the public. Gives you some foundation that what happens, but this one is basic disaster life support, and this is geared for disaster management, and it has been more refined since 2001, and this course has been in existence now, you can see, 12 years, and it's on a paradigm, disaster. So it's a detection, it's an incident command system, and it has safety, security, SS hazard, support, triad, and treatment, evacuation, recovery. And it is a didactic 8 hours course. So it's a didactic lectures, talk about national...
8 hours?
It's 8 hours.
8.
It's a 1-day course. But the good thing is, because this is basic, you can have 100 people attending the course. And they get information about natural disaster, traumatic, explosive events, nuclear radiological events, chemical events, psychological aspect, public health implication of disaster. So this is geared for not only physicians, nurses, anybody who is working in the medical field and public health department, they can take that. The next one is advanced life support. And this is 2 days. The first day is, to get the advanced disaster life support, one has to have finish the basic disaster life support. Normally there is a pre-test and the post-test after the day, and want to see how much you have gotten better. And then this is 2 days didactic, hands-on, practical application. The first day is mainly, this is small group, only 50 people really, and divided into 6-8 batches. So it's very interactive, and they have a tabletop exercises, so where this batch does that, they are given a scenario, and they do that, and then some didactic in that sense. But the most important second day is all practical. They're bulleted station. So what that means, that if you have, say, chemical attack, you have to give something atropine, how to give osseous injection, that kind of thing. Or you have to give tetanus shot, how do you do that? If you have to do air management, how you can secure the airway. And this is mass triad, which means move, assess, and sort and send. This is you want to save the most you are able to save, and then you go back and look again. How's the people who are previously, you said you were going to check back and see if they're doing better. Because majority of people when disaster happens, they're worrying well. They take their own car or something, a family, and they just, crowd up the emergency room. So the real ones who really needed help, it's hard for them to get there. And personal equipment, protective equipment, when you have something hard zone, you just cannot go in a hard zone. You have to protect yourself. Decontamination, and then we have this high simulation, simulators, a mannequin, and we play the scenario. If this happens, how you will treat it, what you will go about it. So this is really 2 days course for all hazard casualties. This is the American College of Emergency Physician endorses the ADLS courses and the basic disaster as the gold standard for the mass casualty incidents. And this is National Prepared Leadership Initiative, which is a combined course by the School of Public Health and Kennedy School. This is for the leaders who face the crisis. And my good friend, ex-Surgeon General Isaac Ashkenazi was part of this thing. And I sat in the first few courses and was as an observer, and since then been tweaked. It's based on 5 dimensions. Once, if as a leader, you are sitting there, you have to when disaster occurs, what happened with emotions. So leader has to understand himself first, how much, because you got to maintain your calm and collectiveness, and you have to assess the situation, what context is going to happen. And third is, you have your team. So you have to make sure that the team is optimum, and it has to really keep up with the learning, and fourth is leading up, when you have to deal with your superiors and politicians or managers or the experts who are in this subject matter. And fifth is cross, connectivity, across the people who you are dealing with. For example, you saw the picture of the National Disaster Management Structure, all the various organizations. This just doesn't happen in a day. You have to be working with those people to attain that kind of trust and the confidence and their understanding. So when you are in this situation, they know how capable you are, and you know what weaknesses are. So they supplement each other, complement each other, both. So here is, from that NPLI, we also realize there is a role of bystanders in immediate response. And this is to increase the community resilience in the face of tragedy. It's the most important. The goal of saving lives must be absolutely clear. In Israel, the first hour after any event, all responders, whether it is police, whether it's fire, emergency medical services, military, politicians, bystander drivers, all directed and trained to save lives. Particularly clear, the bystanders who naturally become the immediate responders, they are the ones who save 75 to 80% of lives, right there. You look at the Boston Marathon, what happened?
Yeah.
Before the EMS people came in, people took their belts, the clothing off, and applied the tunic. And that's what I mean by bystander coming to your rescue. They were trying to cap the pressure where the wound was, or the artery, so they can stop, diminish the bleeding. Marathon, in Boston Marathon, of course 3 people died, but there were 250 people who were transported to the various institutions. There were 20 amputations and a few other surgery. Everybody survived. It's credible to their surge capacity and their preparedness. This didn't happen just in a vacuum. The woman hospital, Brigham Hospital, Twitter message got to the emergency room. And the emergency room physician who was in charge, what he did, he called the operator. And he asked to the nurse supervisor, how many rooms are running? And how many people are waiting to be? He says, well, 4 rooms is still going to be used. He said, hold on. Keep them empty. Don't set anybody in yet till you hear from us. In the meantime, everybody, the surgeon, everybody were in the ER. As the patient came in, they didn't wait in the ER. They went to the OR, straightforward. And this is what I mean, preparedness. This is how they were saved, everybody. There was no death. I think this is credible. So, planning to enhance community resilience is an African proverb that a man who does not know where he's going does not need a map. So the purpose of this is planning begins with the community defining for itself where it wants to go, what it wants to be in the future. For example, Uttarakhand, monsoons are there, the landslides are there. That community has to learn what they have to do. Here, after hurricane, believe me, the young people are beginning to see, if they see a crack in the building or something, they're beginning to see if there is earthquake. They look at the trees, if they are brittle. That's what I mean, the awareness of the public, so they can do that. And again, it's to think the unthinkable, reach the unreachable, and dream the impossible. You're not going to be successful 100 times, but unless you have that kind of mindset, you will not be able to prepare yourself.
I think in many ways Tokyo has done that.
Well, Tokyo's
prone.
Well, look at these. They were the best prepared for tsunami.
Yes.
In Fukuyama, tragedy.
Yeah.
They were best prepared for tsunami. And Japan overall are number one in preparedness of disaster because of their previous experiences. But when Fukuyama happened, and you see what is interesting is, even though how tragic it was, the people, if you look at the Japanese, they were standing properly in queue, nobody was panicked. From their face, you could see they were bearing the tragedy in a very calm and collective way, while there was no chaos, there was no panic, and that helps a lot. So this was the summary which I responded, which I talk about as a framework of a structured program. It will enhance the resiliency of the people. This training center provides a framework for public-private partnership and collaboration of U.S.-Indian diaspora, Indian government, solidifying the relationship and the goodwill. That's what we want to do. GOPIO's objective is to help the Indian citizens by whatever efforts we can make to help them prepare to their best and avoid these yearly tragedies. So, thank you, and this is my information if you need to, and I appreciate your indulgence and listening to me, and with all humility, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may all have.
This has been a presentation of Dr. Raj Lal on emergency preparedness and response during disasters in India. He has emphasized on the need to have such preparedness and centers for training people all over India. This is one of the tasks which GOPIO is going to take up in the future. We need Government of India to move in that direction so that such preparedness and centers are developed and people are developed, and people, bystanders, can be trained for such calamities and disasters which happen in India. This has been brought to you by GOPIO News.